You can be surrounded by family and still feel deeply alone. You sit in the same room. You share meals. You exchange familiar words. And yet, something inside you feels untouched, not rejected, not unloved, just not reached. Sometimes the loneliness isn't about distance. It's about feeling emotionally out of sync with the people closest to you. Loneliness hurts differently when it comes from the people you love. You don't talk about it much. You don't want to sound ungrateful. You don't want to hurt anyone. So you tell yourself, this is just part of getting older. But there are quiet moments when you wonder how you became someone who belongs, but doesn't quite feel included. If you've ever felt lonely while surrounded by family, this isn't a failure of love. It's the quiet ache of wanting to be known where you already are. And this conversation is for that unspoken feeling. 1. Being close, but not emotionally met. You can be close to people and still feel far away. You're in the same room. You hear the same sounds. You share the same routines. But emotionally, you feel slightly out of place. Closeness doesn't always mean connection. You notice it in small moments. When conversations stay practical. When no one asks how you're really doing. When the day moves on without ever slowing down enough to notice how you feel. It's not that your family doesn't care, they do. But caring and meeting are not always the same thing. Everyone has their roles now, their responsibilities, their pace. And somewhere along the way, your inner world stopped being part of the conversation. You don't bring it up much. Not because it isn't important, but because you don't want to disrupt the rhythm. You don't want to sound like you're asking for more than anyone can give. So you stay present, helpful, understanding, but inside, there's a quiet sense of distance. Not dramatic enough to explain, not painful enough to demand attention. Just the feeling that you're emotionally nearby, but not quite reached. If you've ever felt that subtle loneliness while sitting among people who love you, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means your heart is still looking for a place where it can be fully met. Not just included, but understood. 2. When roles replace connection. Over time, roles quietly take over. You become the one who helps, who remembers, who keeps things running, and little by little, those roles begin to replace connection. Being needed isn't the same as being emotionally met. You're asked to show up in specific ways, to help with this, to watch over that, to be available. But no one asks how you're holding everything. Conversations revolve around tasks, schedules, logistics, and you move through them smoothly, because you've done this for years. But somewhere inside, you notice the shift. You're valued for what you provide, not for what you feel. And because you care, you don't complain. You tell yourself, this is how family works now. Everyone is busy. Everyone is stretched. So you stay in your role, capable, reliable, contained. But when roles become the main way people relate to you, your inner world slowly fades from view. And that can feel lonely. Not because you want attention, but because you want to be known beyond what you do. If you've ever felt invisible behind your usefulness, it doesn't mean your family doesn't love you. It means connection has quietly been replaced by function, and your heart is noticing the difference. 3. Feeling unseen in familiar spaces. There's a particular kind of loneliness that happens in places you know by heart. Rooms you've sat in for years, tables where you've shared countless meals, spaces filled with familiar sounds, and yet you feel unseen. Feeling unseen hurts more when it happens in places that once felt safe. You notice it when you speak and the conversation keeps moving. When your words land politely, but don't linger. You notice it in the way no one looks up when you grow quiet. It's subtle, easy to dismiss. You tell yourself you're imagining it. But over time, that feeling repeats. You're present, but not fully noticed. You don't make it a problem. You don't interrupt the flow. You've learned how to stay where you're expected. And that learning came from love, from wanting harmony, from not wanting to burden anyone. But familiar spaces can become lonely when no one pauses long enough to really see you. Not just as a parent, or a partner, or the reliable one, but as a person with thoughts that go deeper than the moment allows. If you've ever felt invisible in rooms filled with people you love, it doesn't mean you don't belong. It means those spaces changed, and your inner world is still waiting to be recognized there. That waiting can be quietly painful, because you're not asking for attention. You're asking to be seen where you already are. 4. Why you stop explaining yourself. At some point, you stopped explaining yourself. Not all at once, gradually. You noticed that when you shared how you felt, it was often misunderstood, minimized, or gently redirected. So you learned to simplify. Silence often begins after being misunderstood too many times. You learned which parts of you were easy to accept, and which parts made the room uncomfortable. So you chose the easier path. You answered briefly. You softened your words. You let things go. Not because they didn't matter, but because explaining felt like work. You didn't want to justify your feelings. You didn't want to defend your inner world. So you kept it private. And, from the outside, it looks like calm. But inside, there's a quiet distance. Because when you stop explaining yourself, people stop asking. They assume you're fine. They assume you don't need much. And you don't correct them. If you've grown quieter around family, it doesn't mean you've checked out. It means you've learned how to protect what's tender. That protection makes sense. But it can also feel lonely, because there's a part of you that still wants to be known, without having to argue for your feelings or make them easier to hear. That part hasn't disappeared. It's just waiting for a safer place to speak. 5. The loneliness of being the strong one. You've been the strong one for a long time. The one who holds things together, who stays calm, who doesn't fall apart. And over time, that strength became expected. When you're always the strong one, no one thinks to ask if you're tired. People lean on you. They trust you. They assume you'll manage. And you usually do. But strength has a quiet cost. When others see you as capable, they stop checking in. They stop wondering how much you're carrying. Not out of neglect, but out of habit. You don't correct them. You've learned that being strong keeps things stable, keeps worry away, keeps the family moving. So you hold yourself together, even when something inside feels heavy. You tell yourself, this is just part of your role. But sometimes, being the strong one means there's no obvious place for your own vulnerability to go. And that can feel lonely, because you're not looking to fall apart. You're just longing for one moment where you don't have to be steady. If you've felt that quiet exhaustion, it doesn't mean your strength was a mistake. It means strength was never meant to be carried alone. And the part of you that wants to rest is not weak. It's human. 6. What family connection changes with age? Family connection doesn't disappear with age. It changes. Quietly, gradually, often without anyone noticing. As roles shift, emotional closeness often fades. Not intentionally, but naturally. When you were younger, connection happened through doing life together, raising children, building routines, solving problems side by side. Now, those roles are different. Everyone has their own pace, their own pressures, their own worlds. So family connection becomes more functional. Check-ins replace conversations. Updates replace sharing. Presence replaces intimacy. And no one means for it to feel distant, but it does. You notice that moments don't linger, that conversations don't deepen, that emotions are acknowledged, but not explored. You tell yourself, this is just how life unfolds, that expecting more would be unrealistic. But wanting connection to evolve is not asking for the past to return. It's asking for something to adjust. Because while family roles change, your inner life doesn't disappear. You still reflect. You still feel deeply. You still long to be known, not as who you used to be, but as who you are now. If family connection feels thinner than before, it doesn't mean love is gone. It means connection hasn't caught up to who you've become. And that awareness can feel quietly lonely when it has nowhere to be spoken. 7. Allowing yourself to want more. At some point, you learned to want less attention, less reassurance, less emotional space. Not because you didn't need it, but because you didn't want to be a burden. Loneliness deepens when you stop allowing yourself to want more. You told yourself your needs were already met. You have family, you're not alone. Others have it harder. So you kept your longings quiet. But wanting emotional connection is not selfish. It's not childish. It's not asking for too much. It's a natural response to a life that has depth. Allowing yourself to want more doesn't mean demanding change. It means acknowledging truth, that you still want to be known, that you still want conversations that go beneath the surface, that you still want to feel met, not managed. You don't need constant closeness. You don't need grand gestures. You just need permission to admit that what you feel matters. If you've been minimizing your own needs to keep peace, please know this. Wanting more connection doesn't mean you're dissatisfied. It means your heart has not closed. And that openness, even when it hurts, is a sign of life, not something to outgrow. 8. You are allowed to be known. If you felt lonely even while surrounded by family, please hear this gently. You are allowed to be known. Belonging doesn't mean disappearing inside love. You don't need to justify why something feels missing. You don't need to explain why closeness feels thinner now. And you don't need to force yourself to be satisfied with only surface connection. You've spent a lifetime showing up for others, adjusting, understanding, holding space. It makes sense that part of you now wants to be met in return. Not constantly, not dramatically, just honestly. Being known doesn't mean everything has to change. Sometimes it simply means allowing one moment to be a little slower, one conversation to go a little deeper. And even if that doesn't happen right away, your longing still deserves respect. You are not ungrateful. You are not asking for too much. You are responding to the truth of who you are now. Let this space be one place where you don't have to shrink to keep harmony. You are allowed to be present and still be seen. And that truth can stay with you long after the quiet returns.